This week in Louisiana agriculture.
The floodwaters are gone in the Morganza spillway, but there's still a lot of cleanup to be done. I'm Avery Davidson with that story ahead.
I'll show you how farmers here in Morehouse Parish celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Black Farm Tour.
And farmers and ranchers have united to better tell the story of agriculture. How can you get involved? Hi, I'm AJC Bean. Thank you so much for joining us. Michael Dana has the week off. The flood is gone, but the damage remains from the flood of 2011. Farmers and ranchers in the Morganza spillway are again able to get into their fields and pastures now that the Army Corps of Engineers has closed off all of the gates on the spillway structure. As This Week in Louisiana Agriculture's Avery Davidson shows us, the flood did more than alter the landscape, but the lives of the farmers in its path.
A rotting fish caught on barbed wire is what greets you when you visit Ricky Rivet's hayfield at the base of the Morganza spillway structure. In the days before the Army Corps of Engineers opened the gates, Rivet rushed to get his heifers and steers out of the way. Now, rather than grazing cattle, all you see are gray boulders dotting the landscape.
Rocks all over the pasture. There's gouge holes out there where the water came through. He's going to be severely impacted as far as his haymaking and pasture right there, because it's going to take a long time to get all those rocks picked up.
Miles Brashear is the county agent in Poincapé Parish. He remembers when water rushed through the gates of this structure with the power of this freight train. That's what cut these gouges, which are nearly 200 feet long and 40 feet deep.
Surprisingly, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be.
Miles says inside the spillway where these floodwaters have gone down, farmers are busy planting soybeans. However, they're only able to plant about 10,000 acres of the land, half of their normal acreage.
Things aren't quite as dire as we initially thought it would be. And if we keep getting these little afternoon showers and whatnot, we think we'll still be okay.
We're finally getting some good summertime rains. So even though some of these fields have partial stands, they still have decent yield potential. The prices are still really good.
Marty Graham grows just about every crop you can plant in Poincapé Parish. He says folks inside and outside the spillway are having problems growing soybeans this year.
When normally beans will come up in 3 to 4 days, you're going back in the fields a week later and you're only seeing a partial stand.
That's what's happening in George LaCour's field just outside of the spillway. Brashear says he spoke recently with a crop consultant who may know what's happening.
He did some soil readings on temperature from 1 inch down to 2 inches, and the soil temperature at 1 inch deep was 115 degrees. So as that little bean germinated, that root system was trying to develop, it was actually getting cooked.
So while this growing season is not the complete disaster some thought it would be, it's still one some farmers would prefer to forget. In Morganza, I'm Avery Davidson for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
Originally, Dr. Kirk Guidry with the LSU Ag Center estimated that the floodwaters from the Morganza spillway could destroy nearly 300,000 acres of farmland. It appears the drought conditions at the time decreased the damage from the flood. The LSU Ag Center is currently assessing the damage and will have a full report in the coming weeks. Dry weather may be to blame for the first appearance of Asian soybean rust in Louisiana this year. Evangeline Parish County Agent Keith Fontenot says plant pathologists discovered Asian soybean rust on a kudzu plant growing in Iberia Parish. Asian soybean rust is a fungal disease that can decrease yields. Fontenot says if you find soybean rust in your fields, you should contact your county agent to find the best way to fight off the rust. You'll find a link to the LSU Ag Center's website where you can find your county agent on our website at twilatv.org. Planting an idea can almost be as hard as planting a cotton crop, especially if you're trying to convince a young person to take up agriculture. This year, the Morehouse Parish Black Farmers and Landowners Association celebrated its 10th anniversary and designed this year's field day around one idea: to plant the seeds of production agriculture into the mind of the next generation of ag producer.
You got to pick it down.
A cotton field has become a classroom, as Antoine Downs, there in the green shirt, teaches these boys about cotton during the Morehouse Parish Black Farmers and Landowners Association annual field day. In its 10th year, this field day is not only a place to get the latest crop information, but for these young people, it's also a new take on an old idea. Agriculture is a viable career choice. For association member Robert Coleman, he wants his 5 grandkids to know where their bread and butter come from.
I like to see them be able to continue to grow in agriculture and continue to be able to raise some type food, or do something that's important, you know. And I need them to understand this is how agriculture works. You plant these seeds and they grow, and then you gather.
It takes it off of the cob
In Bonita, the crowd collects information about corn. Listeners take photos and give their attention as Downs describes a typical corn harvest. P.J. Haney knows a lot about corn. Haney, a Virginia row crop farmer, sits on the board of the National Black Growers Council, an organization that promotes sustainability among African American farmers. Haney says it's vitally important that young people get involved.
This corn, they can't put it on a plate, but the corn that goes and gets fed to the chickens, that's fed to the beef cattle, and they pick it up through their McDonald's chicken nuggets or their steaks on their dinner plate. That's what we got to get them to realize, the whole circle of life here, and how this food that is in this row crop stage goes on their dinner table.
The acquisition of land for young ag producers was just one of many issues discussed during this year's field day. NBGC President Bill Bridgeforth says his organization has partnered with the Morehouse Parish Black Farmers and Landowners Association to develop strategies to help young African Americans acquire suitable farmland. In fact, the issue has framed the council's legislative agenda.
It's been for several years, maybe even 2 generations. The only way to get into row crop farming is you either marry into it or you're born into it. There are a few exceptions, of course, but generally that's just the way it is. So it makes it hard for especially our men and women to get involved in row crop production.
The Morehouse Parish Black Farmers and Landowners Association started with an idea. The idea that agriculture can take root in a young person and grow into a farmer who can preserve the ag industry for the next generation.
Cotton, soybean, and cattle specialists from both the LSU Ag Center and the Southern University Ag Center participated in the event. Facebook now has 750 million users, and Twitter is averaging about 40 million tweets per day. As the popularity of social media continues to rise, so do the voices of those who oppose agriculture. That's why it's important for farmers and ranchers alike to be active on Facebook, Twitter, and other forms of social media. Joining us now is Hillary Whitaker, our social media specialist here at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. And Hillary, you just got back from a big ag summit down in New Orleans. How was it?
Well, AJ, it was a great event, and it was actually really informative as well. Ag communicators from across the nation came together to better tell the story of agriculture.
Ag communicators in particular, but also ag journalists are really the voice of farmers. And being able to tell that story about how hard they work to produce good food for people here in the United States and throughout the world.
Karen Simon, chairman of the Ag Media Summit Steering Committee, tells us that while ag communicators do a great job of telling farmers' stories, it's also important that farmers get involved in ways such as social media. Farmers no longer need a mouthpiece. Social media sites allow farmers to tell their own stories. At seminars like this one, farmers get the tools they need to learn how to share their message.
They're really mad.
John Taylor, president of JT Marcom, says social media is a great tool for farmers and ranchers. It allows you to connect directly with consumers.
You've got a really good story to tell because people, the consumer, they are not aware in many cases where their food comes from and what it takes to bring it to the table. So I think for those reasons, social media is just critical to the ag industry to reach out to the consumer.
Now, Taylor also says the reason it's critical is that it ensures people are getting the correct message.
Because they're getting messages from other organizations through social media that might be counter to what the ag industry is trying to accomplish.
As we see more information coming out in the blogosphere and Facebook and Twitter from the critics of today's production agriculture, it's very important for farmers and ranchers to be in that space and telling our stories to consumers about the benefits that today's American agriculture provides, and in addition to directly answering those questions that consumers may raise.
To help combat negativity towards the industry, American Farm Bureau President Bob Stallman was instrumental in forming the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance. The alliance helps enhance Americans' trust in the U.S. food production system by leading a conversation in today's agriculture and answering those questions from consumers.
Consumers have less awareness of production agriculture, and they're being influenced by critics of today's production agriculture that we believe will do damage to our ability to produce food, fiber, and fuel in this country.
Now, to learn more about the Alliance, you can visit our website, twilatv.org. Also, if you have any questions about how to get involved and start up your own social media sites, don't hesitate to contact us. And AJ, I'm constantly updating our social media sites, so make sure you check them out. And hopefully you at home will do the same.
Hillary, I'll be sure and do that. And you folks at home can find all of our social media links on our website at twilatv.org. With many farmers in Louisiana making disaster claims this year, there could be a good chance those farmers are going to need legal help to iron out those differences with decision makers. This week in Louisiana Agriculture's Avery Davidson is sitting down with a guest who can provide that help for free.
AJ, farmers are businessmen, which means that they enter into lots of contracts, and sometimes there are disputes in those contracts which require mediation rather than going to court. Joining me now is John Pierre, the Vice Chancellor at the Southern University Law Center. John, I understand you guys have a program called the Louisiana Agricultural Mediation Program. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, the Louisiana Agricultural Mediation Program is one of several programs that are certified by the United States Department of Agriculture. It's part of what's called the Coalition of Agricultural Mediation Programs. And what we do at the Southern University Law Center is we help mediate disputes between agricultural producers and the USDA over several programs, and also actual homeowners who have loans with rural development in rural areas who may have problems with payments on their homes, and prior to foreclosure, we try to mediate some of those disputes with the USDA.
Why is mediation so important rather than, say, filing suit or going to court, which is what you hear a lot of folks talk about?
Well, mediation is a good way to resolve conflict without incurring a great deal of expense. Typically, what we find is that when there's a conflict, one of the reasons the conflict exists is because both sides aren't able to talk to each other in ways that each party understands each other. So mediation tries to bring the parties together. The mediator is a neutral, so therefore he's not making a decision. He's trying to help the parties find solutions to their problems. So everybody doesn't get what they want, but they usually come to some type of resolution that they can live with.
And typically in the mediation process, just kind of talk me through what goes on.
Well, typically what happens is this. Someone might apply for a loan with USDA, or they might have crop damage because of a storm or something like that. And the USDA will probably have a program that will cover that. They might apply for benefits. The USDA might deny them the benefits. At that particular point in time, they can appeal that decision or they can seek mediation. Appeals take a long time, and there's a lot of bureaucratic paperwork to go through. If you choose the mediation process, you get to come to a place that we provide, and you get to be with someone that you can talk to about how to resolve the problem. It could be, for example, that the reason you were denied a loan is because you didn't meet the requirements for the loan. You might have been a year short of qualifying, or there might be an issue with your credit that you didn't realize. So then what we try to do is we try to find solutions to help people realize that they can solve their problems without going through expensive appeals process and litigation.
And how does someone get in touch with the Southern University Law Center to get to be part of the LAMP program?
Well, basically, we have two numbers that you can call. You can call 225 area code 771-3333 or 225-771-2555. And you can ask for either Alvin Washington or myself, John Pierre.
And tell me a little bit about the history of this. This goes back, this isn't something new, this goes back to, say, the mid to late 80s.
Yes. The mediation program at the USDA level has been around for over 25 years. And it came about as a result of trying to help agriculture producers and individuals and or entities that receive services from USDA to sort of use an alternative way to resolve conflict rather than tying up the agency with a lot of administrative bureaucracy, with a lot of litigation. So this is a way to help reduce cost. And Congress has, every 5 years, funded this program because I think it works. It really works very, very well all across the country.
And quickly, because we're running out of time, but you mentioned cost. How much does this cost a farmer or someone to get in touch with you guys?
It doesn't cost them anything. Our program services are free. So basically, you have a dispute, we try to help you resolve it. It doesn't cost you anything to do it. It might cost you a little time to travel to, and actually, we actually go out to locations. If farmers live away from Baton Rouge, we have done mediation in places outside of Baton Rouge.
And with high input costs, I know farmers like free. Thank you very much. He is John Pierre, the Vice Chancellor at the Southern University Law Center. And AJ, in case you missed any of those numbers, we're going to post them onto our website, twilatv.org, and we'll put a link to the LAMP program there at the Southern University Law Center. Back to you.
Thanks, Avery. Still to come on This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, Kristen Oakes finally brings us an Ag Minute that really cuts the mustard. Literally. Stay with us. Researchers presented updates of studies on corn, cotton, and soybeans at a field day in Northeast Louisiana. Toby Blanchard with the LSU Ag Center attended the field day along with many farmers growing crops in that area and has this report.
Farmers gathered at the LSU Ag Center Northeast Field Day to hear from agriculture scientists about their research. Studies include variety evaluation, pest, weed, and disease management research, and cotton defoliation projects. The station's resident coordinator, Donnie Miller, said researchers conduct long-term projects while having the flexibility to tackle issues that need immediate attention, such as herbicide-resistant weeds. Recent flooding in areas of Northeast Louisiana may have complicated this problem.
There's concern that we had some of these, the resistant weed seed, palm amaranth, so forth, carried down in some of these floodwaters and deposited out on fields.
At the field day, Miller presented information from his research on a new herbicide, Zidua, which could help in the fight against weeds resistant to the herbicide glyphosate.
In our trials this year, Zidua has performed very well from a residual standpoint, gave us great grass control, great pigweed control, which is very important.
Miller said dry weather has been a problem for growers this year. The station was fortunate to get rain at crucial times, but some farmers were not. LSU Ag Center corn and cotton specialist John Cruz said irrigated corn looks promising, but yields of dryland corn will likely vary.
One grower down the road may have picked up the occasional thunderstorm, and that may have made all the difference, whereas another grower a few miles away missed it, and his corn just never got the moisture that it needed to finish out the crop.
Harvest on dryland corn could start in the next few weeks. Cruz added that the state's cotton crop looks mixed because much of it is grown without irrigation. For This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, this is Toby Blanchard with the LSU Ag Center.
Agriculture contributes the most money to the Northeast region's economy, and farmers in the area depend heavily on the research conducted at the Northeast Research Station. Kristen Oakes joins us now with the Ag Minute. And Kristen, you did an Ag Minute on a hot dog a few weeks ago, and I understand this week's Ag Minute pairs nicely with a hot dog.
Well, it does, AJ, and I have a little riddle for you if you want to play along.
I'm ready.
Okay, so a dog is a man's best friend, right?
Yes.
Then what is a hot dog's best friend?
Judging by your shirt, is it mustard?
You are correct. And the first Saturday in August is National Mustard Day, and it's only fitting that we devote an entire day to one of the world's oldest condiments.
Classic yellow mustard. It's the hot dog's best friend and one of America's favorite condiments. But even though a hot dog with mustard seems like the most good old American treat you can find, the history of mustard started long before our great nation ever did. It's no surprise that ancient Egyptians actually found mustard seeds in the wild, and they chewed them along with their meat. By the 1400s, mustard recipes spread throughout Europe, and each region made its own style. Pope John of Avignon loved mustard so much that he created the Grand Mustard Maker to the Pope and gave the job to a nephew who lived near the city of Dijon, France. Mustard arrived in America during the 1700s when immigrants set up their own businesses. In the early 20th century, Francis French decided that America needed a new kind of mustard, a milder, smoother version. In 1921, he debuted the new French's yellow mustard at the World's Fair. It was there he also paired his mustard with the hot dog, and another American classic was born. Today, Americans use mustard more than any other country in the world. And ketchup may be America's favorite condiment, but don't ever tell the hot dog that.
Now, every year, folks celebrate National Mustard Day in downtown Middleton, Wisconsin, home of the National Mustard Museum, with lots of free hot dogs, live music, and of course, plenty of mustard samples. Now it's time for Twila Trivia. Last week I asked you about how many farmers markets are there in the United States, and the answer is A, 6,000. For this week's question, which country produces the most mustard seeds? Is it A, Canada, B, USA, or C, Germany? Now all you need to do is log on to our website, twilatv.org, submit your answer, and we'll send one correct entry a brand new Twila prize pack with some great new goodies. Now stay tuned, we have a lot more to come on This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
Are you paying more at the grocery store? Find out when those prices will come down on My Bottom Line up next.
The USDA has a new forecast for consumer food prices out right now, and joining us for this week's Bottom Line is Neil Melancon. And Neil, the report's kind of like that lyric from The Who that says, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss," right?
Well, that's certainly appropriate, AJ, as the forecast really hasn't changed too much. Grocery store prices for 2011 are still expected to increase by 3 to 4% this year, with many prices expected to rise even higher. For instance, beef and pork prices are expected to rise as much as 7 to 8% this year due to a combination of lower supply and higher prices for feed grains. The heat and the drought in Texas and the Midwest has caused a massive influx of cattle to go into feed yards, but that has dropped off significantly in the past 2 weeks, and in the next few months, prices will rise even higher as the supply drops off. Fresh fruits and vegetables, meanwhile, are expected to rise only 1.5 to 2% this year. A steady supply means that at least some price stability is going to go on in 2012, although prices for some items in this category will rise even further. As for where prices will go in 2012, it depends on 3 key factors. The first is the underlying costs, such as what I described for livestock earlier. If grain prices continue to rise, it will have a chain effect on end-user products such as the beef you buy in the grocery store. Also, outside markets like oil will negatively impact food prices if it continues to climb. The second key factor here is the economy. Now, although we're technically out of a recession, there's a lot of negative baggage weighing on us, such as the high unemployment and the specter of inflation, especially with more money being spent on food. Finally, the weather will also play its part. Bad weather will add to crop loss and the underlying cost associated with that, but it also affects transportation and shipping of our food, which consumers pay for. The bottom line here is that prices are expected to come down from 2011 highs, but that's a far from certain deal, and even if they do come down, AJ, in 2012, it won't be by much.
Thanks, Neil. And remember, you can listen to Neil's reports on the Louisiana Farm Bureau Radio Network. For the list of stations where you can tune in or listen, just click on over to our website, twilatv.org, and look for the LFB radio link on the left side of the homepage. That does it for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. Be sure and join us again next week when our very own Kristen Oakes will show us how poultry research in North Louisiana is helping growers across the country. Until then, you can watch all of our stories online on our website, twilatv.org. For all of us here at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, I'm AJ Sabine. We hope to see you right here next week.